Mark Rogers TV talking college football, of course, and making our way across the country, trying to get to as many teams as possible and address every quarterback situation. So we make our way to the ACC in Wake Forest and bring in Robert Reinhard of Blogger So Dear. Robert's joined us many times and filled us in on the comings and goings and what's happening there in Winston-Salem. Robert, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, always a pleasure, Mark. Thanks for having me on again.
Definitely. So, Demon Deacons coming off 3-9, 1-7 in the conference. John Wolford got that initial start, at least from the stats. I believe he started that game against Louisiana Monroe, that opening night loss.
Yes.
12 for 22 effort out of him. So, you know, he played pretty well, 58%, tossed 14 interceptions against 12 touchdowns. But one thing I noticed here, Robert, is that he progressively got more attempts later in the season, so it looked like the approach was a bit conservative, kind of kept him around 20 attempts, and then they opened it up, even in some games that were not out of hand later in the season. Last 5 games, he had over 30 attempts. So just your assessment of Wolford's performance as a freshman and what you expect coming up this fall.
Yeah, I think you did a great job of describing it, and I think he got better as the season progressed. True freshman, so obviously that's difficult, and he was a true freshman also in the sense that he did not enroll until about May or June, so he did not participate in any spring practice prior to that. You know, the last game of the season completed 66% of his passes for about 240 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, in sort of a back-and-forth game against Duke, who was a very good team last year. So that sort of gives, I think, Wake fans a lot of hope towards the end of the season. Only 7 interceptions, half of his interceptions over the first 4 games of the season. So against ACC opponents, got much better, got much more comfortable with the offense, and I think the coaching staff showed a lot more faith in him. And another thing which makes it difficult to judge him on was that the offensive line was not very good. So it's not like he had a lot of protection. In addition to that, we had the worst rushing attack in football last year, so he couldn't really rely on just being able to hand it off to a running back and, you know, keep the defense a little bit more honest. And we didn't really have any threats who could make big plays, so he was relied on constantly to have to make good reads and dump it down. So, I mean, I think all things considered, Wake fans are happy about Wolford's performance in year 1. Definitely excited given his pedigree in high school, broke a lot of high school records in the state of Florida. So you know, in observing him in spring practice, I think he demonstrated more knowledge of the playbook, definitely looked more comfortable out there. So I would expect a good season from him in 2015.
So, Robert, kind of a 2-part question here. Does Wolford, based on the performance in the spring coming off the freshman season, has he firmly entrenched himself as the starter? Has that been stated that way, or is it still a battle? And if so, who are those people in play? And even if not, obviously he's only 1 play away from needing to go to a backup quarterback. So who are some of those other quarterbacks out there?
Well, I think for now he's the starter. I'm not sure if Dave Clawson has actually said that or not. I think the most likely candidate to replace him or beat him out would be Kendall Hinton, who is a true freshman out of the Durham area. He was a high 3-star prospect, came down to North Carolina State and Wake. He chose Wake. He actually enrolled early, so he participated fully in spring practice, participated in the scrimmages, looked impressive in those. Little tough to grade him on those because, number one, you can't tackle the quarterbacks in spring practice, and number two, he was going against the second-string defense while Wolford was going against the first-string defense, so it's a little tough to compare there, but he's certainly a promising prospect. I would not be surprised if Clawson utilized him in several packages. He's more of a dual threat, though he is a better passer than people give him credit for. But he is a good athlete. And, one thing Clawson has said about Wolford this year is that he's going to let him run more than he did last year. Last year, Clawson really had no faith in the backups. And as you said, being 1 play away from having potentially missing the season. So Hinton is a person who I think will probably get some snaps this year. Another prospect is Kyle Kearns, who's a 4-star quarterback out of California. He was part of the 2015 recruiting class but did not enroll early. Just based on being behind another freshman in terms of learning the offense and a person who has started an entire season, I would say he's definitely the least likely of the three to start, but he will definitely provide good depth and could compete for the second or for the backup role, but I wouldn't expect him to start.
Okay, so Wake Forest looking for more offensive production, and they've got some promise with a hopeful season of a freshman campaign, and John Wolford looking forward to his sophomore campaign. And as you mentioned, the rushing attack probably can't get worse, so there has to be some improvement there as well. Robert Reinhard from Blogger So Dear joining us on the Mark Rogers TV here to run down the quarterback situation. So, Robert, as always, we appreciate the information and the insight.
Oh, happy to do it anytime.